Hello, and welcome to another Steer Your Career podcast. I'm really excited for this podcast. We're bringing on the pod one of Kadima's first clients from our first year, our first months in business, Alon Bochman. He worked with us while he was B and C rated companies. That's not what I say. That's what he says on the pod. And after working with us, he got jobs at Microsoft, product manager job at Google. He led AI at FactSet, and now he's running his own startup. So this guy knows how to get a job, and he learned a lot of it through Kadima. So listen to this interview. Alon has been one of my favorite clients. Not that I play favorites, but he followed what our method is. He applied it, got the results. And I think you'll learn a lot of what he took away from our program, and whether you decide to work with us or not, what you can do to get a better job quickly, confidently, and with lots more money. And by the way, if you are looking for some help getting that better job, we offer the 5 C's. We offer coaching, we offer courses, we offer content, we offer community, and we offer care. So if you're looking to get a better job quickly, confidently, and with lots more money, go to kadimacareers.com, check out what we offer. And the last 3 words I'll leave you with before coming into this podcast: own your career. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Steer Your Career podcast. I'm super excited to have on the pod today one of Kadima's first clients back 5 years ago when we started this gig. Alon Bochman is a tremendous leader. He'll tell you a little bit about where he came from before working with me, but we worked together, and I think we stopped working together about a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago, and we've just become friends. So unlike therapy, I'm allowed to become friends with my clients here, so that's amazing. And Alon has had an amazing career. I'll let him introduce himself. But Alon, share with the Sick Career podcast crowd here a little bit about you and your background.
Of course. Thank you, Alon, for that generous intro. So my name is Alon Bochman. I've had about a 30-year career, so I'm ancient. I got my start building a social media platform back before there was SaaS software. So our software actually shipped on a CD that you would flip into your web server, and bootstrapped that company, sold it to Thomson Reuters. I then spent about 20 years in machine learning and AI, starting with American Express and moving on to lead AI teams at Microsoft and at Google. After that, I was head of AI for a company called FactSet. It's a Fortune 500 company in Connecticut. And most recently, I've been running a startup called RagMetrics.ai. I've had a little detour as a hedge fund portfolio manager and another one as a consultant. And so that's my career in a nutshell.
Awesome. And how did we first meet one another? I think I recall it was through Columbia Business School webinar you might have seen me on, but
yeah, I remember it super clearly. I was stuck in a rut, Alon. I was in a consulting company, a giant consulting company. My career wasn't really going anywhere, and I had been looking for a job for 2 years, maybe even 3 years, maybe 2 years, with just 0 results. I would get even some interviews, or I wouldn't get interviews, but the interviews wouldn't convert, and it was just, there was no momentum. And then I got your email from the Columbia Career Services Center, and what I remember, a couple things about your email being super, super impressive. So you didn't have a business back then, you were just getting started, and so you described your own career. You described applying your methods to your own career. What was really, that's, a lot of people do that, but what was impressive to me about your email was you showed some numbers. You showed some numbers of where you were before you started applying this method and where you were after, and how long it took. And those numbers went into graphic detail, which I didn't see anywhere else. And so that was impressive thing to me, number one. The second thing that was really impressive to me was you put a timeline on this process, which I have not seen anywhere else. Everywhere else is, everybody else says, I'll give you the tools, and then it's up to you how fast it goes. And I'm sure that's true. I'm sure if you if you help somebody and they don't want to help themselves and they don't do what you tell them to do, then it could take an infinite time. But what you put in that email was basically like, if you 100% commit to this method, this is what's possible, this is what I did. And that was a unique, quantitative, very persuasive claim. And after that, like I remember I got intrigued, and so I tried to talk to you. And it took me a couple of tries because I was not the only one trying to reach out to you. I think that there were a lot of people that email spoke to, but I persevered. I actually tried 2 or 3 times, and then we got on the phone, and I checked out a couple of your references, and then I jumped in. And I'll tell you, it changed my life. It really did. I don't use that phrase lightly. I'm not a poet, but it really did.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Alon. I'm glad that we met and you were able to transform with some of this. And I was looking back at our first communication, and I gave you my Tableau email. So that's how long ago I was working at Tableau at that time. And I think you emailed me. I was balancing my career at Tableau while starting Kadima, and it was a pandemic and all that stuff. But I'm glad that you persevered. In terms of when you came to me, and you were one of my favorite clients, and I'm not just saying that because you're here now, but you would always ask for feedback of, what should I do? And then you took diligent notes, then you did it, and then you came back and you'd be like, that shit works. And you're still one of my favorite, because like, it's hard sometimes to others, and that's what we're trying to do, is like, how can we effectively change behavior or modify behavior to trust the system?
Yeah.
And what are some of those things that we taught you and shared with you that just transformed from what you were doing previously to what you're doing now?
Absolutely. So I imagine like some of that is going to be like, everybody has a different weak spot. My weak spot was I really had no earthly idea how to do this thing called networking. It was always like it was embarrassing. Like I just had no clue how to do it. I thought that networking meant that you go to like rubber chicken dinners and watered down cocktail evenings with like 100 people around, and you basically introduce yourself with the name tag. And I've been to like a couple of those evenings, and it was super depressing. There was nobody even remotely related to what I did or wanted to do, nobody that could help me, and just that there was a reek of desperation in those events, and it was just like a whole bunch of people looking for a job, nobody with jobs. So that was my experience with networking. I had no other idea how to do it. And then it was just like, before I started working with you, my idea of how to find a job was to just apply to a bunch of jobs like they tell you to do. Like I would just send in my resume, and sometimes I would customize my cover letter, and sometimes I would customize my resume, and sometimes I just thought that I could get people to talk to me that way, and I did it a lot, and it's super time consuming and just zero feedback. And now I bet it's even worse. So that was the before picture. That's what you had to work with. And then the after picture was, I didn't apply to I don't think I applied online to a single other job after I started with your plan. Not until the hiring manager basically said, in order to get your interview, you have to do this thing. Can you please apply to this job, and then we'll get you the interview going. So it was basically a check the box experience, and that was the only time that I would apply. And so that's what I stopped doing. And what I started doing was just reaching out to people and setting up conversations with them, learning from them what they do, what their companies do, what their companies are good at, bad at, what their careers are like, what they're happy with, what they're not happy with, what they think about the industry, and just like doing that at scale, and started growing my network. I think just to give some numbers to that, when I started working with you, I had something like maybe 2,000 connections or 2,000 followers on LinkedIn, I forget. And within the maybe 3 months that we worked together, that between when I started engaging with you and when I found my first job, I think I made an extra, 600-700 connections. That's really what I spent my time on. And a couple of those conversations led to interviews, and then one of those interviews, or 2 of them, led to offers. And I was just completely astounded that it worked. I really was super skeptical, because it sounded like snake oil. It sounded like a fake way around the hard path, the true path of how to get a job, what I thought was the true path. And after I did it and I started to look back, I realized just like how ridiculous the resume approach is and how out of date it is. So that really helped me. I also, if I'll add this other thing, I'm a numbers guy. So what really helped me was when you gave me quantitative feedback. And even in the beginning, I think I mentioned that it was really impressive that we time boxed this process and basically told me, if you do what it takes to do, this is how long things should take. And I haven't heard that from anyone before. And I think it was something like 3 to 4 months. I forget exactly how much it was. And so when I got started, like it's almost like a game, right? In a game, you get a little progress bar, you see what level you're at, you see how far the finish line is. And that was hugely motivating to me to start doing these things that are very different and felt very alien to me. And then I also remember 1 month into it, I had not gotten any interviews. I was just doing the things that you were saying, and I was not getting any of the results. Now, you hadn't told me that there would be any results after 1 month, but I had assumed that there would be, and there weren't. And so I remember this kind of low point, and I remember we had a call. I said, Alon, like, what is going on here? I'm doing everything, and I'm not getting any results. That was basically the way I framed it. And what I didn't need was a pat on the back. What I did need was quantitative feedback. What is quantitative feedback? You said, let's take a look. You say that you're doing everything. Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Are you doing that? We went through a checklist, and then we went through the spreadsheet, and you basically looked at the numbers. So I think we tracked a bunch of different things. One of them was like how many connections I have, how many conversations per week I had. And then you told me, based on these numbers, I think you're still on track to finish within 4 months. And that was a brave thing to say, because like we only knew each other for a month. But it showed me that you trust your system as much as I should trust your system. Because if you didn't trust your system, you said you wouldn't double down on the 4-month timeline. You wouldn't acknowledge that I'm 10, 20% of the way through it. You would just say, this is it, and it takes as long as it takes. And that would, in my mind, that would really hurt credibility, because here I am doing everything, and if it takes as long as it takes, then that's the opposite of it taking 4 months. And so the fact that you looked at the numbers, and the numbers are showing that I'm 25% into it, even though I'm not seeing any like progress toward getting a job. You were seeing it because you'd been through this before. And so that really helped me get through that low point. So it was super helpful to focus on the things that I could control, which were reaching out to more people and having more conversations with people, and trust that the things that I cannot control, which are like, when is the offer going to happen, that they're going to happen, because if you keep flipping a coin, eventually it's going to land tails. So it was super, super helpful.
Yeah. And what you're referring to, it's not there's much science to the specific numbers, but just having that accountability and that structure ensures that you make progress. And those numbers, we've actually evolved a little bit, because when I worked with you, it was a hotter job market at the time. So it was really like, it was 2022 versus now it's a tougher job market. So there were some things that you have to dial up. We have 40 target companies, and I used to say that as a maximum when I worked with you. Now I'm like, that's a minimum. Start with 40, identify a bunch of targets that you want to focus on. Then 30 reach outs per week. I used to say, hey, that'll be more than enough. But now everybody's doing this method. You have to be a little bit more persuasive and perseverant. And so now I say 30 to 100. I was like, go use as many reach outs as you can on LinkedIn until they stop you, which is about 100 per week, a little bit more. Then the 20 star stories, if you create those star stories, or what we call now Carl stories, context, action, result, and learning. And you always interviewed. I think you improved your interviewing skill, but I think what really happened is getting more interviews because of the process. But you get those 20 Carl stories, then 10 applications per week. You got to throw the apps in, and then 5 informational interviews. And that's how I think you said you didn't even have to submit an application. And I'm guessing at Microsoft, at Google, at FactSet. Tell me how you got each of those interviews, because how do you land each of those?
So I'll go like a half step before that. It was so hard for me to start networking. I remember that I literally didn't know what to say, like what to write in those 300 characters. That was a major blocker for me, because it felt like a huge imposition to reach out to somebody I don't know and ask them for 30 minutes. I literally did not have the words of how to do it. And I remember that a big chunk of our sessions were like, here's a guy that I want to talk to. What do I even say to this guy? I don't know him. And you helped me you literally showed me how to research somebody and how to come up with a short message. I remember you telling me that it's not a template, because templates don't work. It has to be personalized to this person. And that didn't mean anything to me. Those were just words, but then you showed me how to personalize, how to find some common threads, and how to write. And I didn't have to write that much. But I remember after going through this a dozen times, I finally got the gist of what this cold outreach process was about. And now I feel like I could do it. But so coming back to your question was, how did I find these jobs? At Microsoft, I started by finding a couple of job postings that were relevant to me. I kept them on a list, did not apply to them, per your advice. And then I basically just I tried to find people at Microsoft that would talk to me basically. And some of them, I did not have any first degree. I think I had some first degree connections in Microsoft. Some of those people talked to me, and then I quickly exhausted those. They would talk to me, it was a polite conversation, no follow-ups. Then I realized that a lot of people from my business school went to Microsoft. It's like that is a Venn diagram with a large overlap. And so I went to my business school and I found a motherload. There were like 20, 30, 40 people who graduated recently were at Microsoft. And so I reached out to those people, and I think one or two of those conversations went pretty well. And one of those people, he was nowhere close to he couldn't hire me. He was not a hiring manager. His division wasn't hiring. And they were also not anywhere near what I did, my specialty. But he liked me. And so he worked for a startup that ended up selling to Microsoft, and we ended up geeking out for 30 minutes, 40 minutes about Microsoft culture. And then nothing happened. And I followed up with him like 2 or 3 times. Basically, hey, can you introduce me to anybody around this team of this job that's hiring? I'm just trying to meet anybody there. And eventually he did. And he introduced me to the skip level manager of the manager who was hiring. And that guy happened to be Israeli and agreed to talk to me. That went well. He introduced me to the hiring manager, and then I went through the interview loop. They already had a candidate in mind actually, but I did pretty well during the interview, and then they basically decided to jam me in instead of this poor guy. Like, this guy applied. He was applied from Microsoft. He went through weeks of interviews. He basically got the green light from the hiring manager, but a couple of the stakeholders liked me better in the 11th hour.
Right.
So they basically chucked him aside and gave me an offer, and I ended up in that job.
And then you had to manage that guy.
No, that guy, he was applying for a transfer, and he never made the transfer. He was elsewhere at Microsoft.
Okay, he wasn't moving up on the team. He was doing lateral internally.
That's right. That was like an object lesson in how much more important networking is than whatever BS happens with the resumes.
And it's also important to know that while it would be great if you knew someone right in that department, or if you knew Satya Nadella, even just having this person who has this commonality with you from business school that's in a totally different area was able to grease the skids for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then with Google, it was a combination of things. I think, first of all, I'll get this out of the way. A Google recruiter reached out to me, which was unexpected, nothing that you can plan for, nothing that I don't think I did anything to earn that. They just called me. But after they called me, I was able to tell them that I actually knew like 20 or 30 people at Google, and I knew 0 people at Google when I started to work with you. The way that I got to know people at Google, first of all, you introduced me to, I think, 1, maybe 2 of them, and that helped me get the ball rolling. And the way that those conversations went was basically, I was not asking for a job. I was asking to get to know these people, everything that I said before, and I was also asking for them to introduce me to more people. And so the ball started rolling, and over time, I got to know 30 people, and that helped a lot when I got to talk to the recruiter, because unlike a lot of the people that she was speaking with, I knew all these things. I knew all these buzzwords, and I knew all these team names, and all of these code yellows that they were going through, and all this like internal Google stuff that outsiders don't know. And so I think that helped smooth the relationship with the recruiter. It helped speed up my loop, and it helped me get an offer from Google.
Yeah. And I think that success begets success. So once you start going down this path, I don't think Microsoft was your top choice at the time. I think Google was your top choice when you landed Microsoft, but I think we consulted and we're like, take the fucking job. There's
Right.
more money. It was a good opportunity. And I believe, I don't know if I did this with you, we do this with our clients now, is we thought strategically about how to position yourself on LinkedIn when getting this job, because that immediately getting that job at Microsoft makes you a more attractive candidate. And while a recruiter did find you, I think you also helped to make it easier for them to find you by updating your title, your logo, having a clean LinkedIn profile so that a recruiter that comes onto your page is, I'm going to reach out to Alon and I'll pass him by for someone else.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. It also did help that this was like you said, it was a very hot hiring market, and Google was hiring by the tens of thousands that year. So it was very different than now, but still it was not easy. The interviews were quite challenging, and even after that, it took a long time for Google to actually make an offer. Even after they told me, you passed the interviews, you're good, and now we're just trying to match you up with an empty slot. And that process, what do they call it, matching or team matching,
Yeah.
that process took 3 months, which was just torture. They're like, you're good enough, but now, we need to actually find a slot for you in the org chart.
Yeah. So it seems like you got a lot working with Kadima. You talked about like the networking aspect and about how to do that effectively. You talked about the framework and the method. That if you follow the method, shit works. You also talked a little bit about some of the coaching that we provided you, or I provided you, on how to communicate effectively. And you said that we didn't have templates. Now we actually do have some templates because we've done enough, but we do highly encourage customization of those conversations, because the more customized it is, if someone went to your same business school or someone of the same nationality as you or something like that's going to increase the likelihood that you're going to build that connection and the relationship and that advocacy that is critical. Are there any other aspects, and this was great, like what else has changed? And since working with us, you have really not had to come back to Kadima, and like you got all these jobs. Every now and then we would check in and I would give you like a booster shot or something like that, but you knew what you were doing with a little guidance. What are you taking with you that you continue to use in your career? Because three different spots since us, you're clearly capable of taking our system, mastering it to your advantage. So I'm just curious what else you use on a day-to-day basis, or not day-to-day, but like when you're looking to accelerate your career.
Yeah, 100%. I'm gonna address this to people who have not gone through your training, and I'm going to call back to the way that I was. When I started with you, I was working for a very large, average consulting company. It's not the worst, it was not the best, it was very big, and it treats people in an average way. And I would like to tell you that the culture change of going from a place like that to a place like Microsoft or Google is so huge that I just could not have imagined it, and it changes you. Like places like Microsoft and Google, and okay, there's been a lot of bad press, right? There's been a lot of labels, but fundamentally places like Microsoft and Google not only pay so much better, but they treat employees so much better than an average company. That treatment changes your mindset as an employee. It changes your you don't want to define your self-worth based on the job. But when everybody around you treats you like a super valuable asset, it can't help but change the way you think about yourself. And that was certainly the case for me. And so having switched from an average company where people, like, it was a typical consulting kind of setting where there's like some internal competition, it's like there's a bit of musical chairs, everybody's scrambling to stay billable, everybody's trying to show up the next person. There's like, it's not terrible, it's just the way corporate America works. That's the way most of corporate America works, in my experience. And that is the way people think of themselves. Okay, I'm a cog in this machine, I'm going to spin a little faster, I'm going to get the cherry. But it's completely different in these FANG companies, top 5, top 10 companies, where you're really treated like you're extremely valuable. Your input is valued. Somebody's thinking about your promotion path. Somebody's thinking about your career, People are trying to give you opportunities, and some of these opportunities for people around you are hitting to the tune of billions of dollars. Not like in compensation, but market impact. And that's just a completely different way of showing up to work every day. And after a couple of years of this, it changes expectations, and it changes the way that you think, and it does change your value in the marketplace. I've experienced this after leaving these two companies, and I just want to be clear that I was not on a path to get these jobs if I kept doing the things that I was doing before. Like, the things that I was doing before were not going to lead to these kind of opportunities. So that's my takeaway.
And on that, where, I don't know if you can imagine this, but where do you think your trajectory would have been?
I was bouncing around between what you would call like B-level companies, C-level companies. So when you make that list, you said pick your top 40, let's call that companies that everybody wants to work at, and then pick your next, and then pick your next, and so that's different levels. And I think like I probably would have gotten better at consulting. I maybe would have risen through the ranks a little bit. My compensation would have gone up like 10 or 20%, and I would have gotten better at the dog-eat-dog politics. And that's the way people around me who were more successful than me were. That's what I have to look forward to at that company. And it's completely different. It's completely different at Microsoft and Google and a couple of these other companies. That is not the path. That we're not talking about 10 or 20%, we're talking about 10 or 20x improvement in impact, in compensation, and it's for the people that are successful in those companies. And it's not just the money, it's just the way that you're treated, the way that your opinion counts, the way that it's bottom up instead of top down. It's a lot of things.
Yeah, I've worked at 22 companies, and I still say my time at Google was my best experience. Those 5.5 years, like outside the politics and some of the shit that I brought onto myself, the way they treat you, the food, the benefits, the
Right.
pay, independence you have, respect of your opinion, the way they treat people. Yeah, it's a special place. It still is. It has those layoffs. They laid off like 6% of people, but that means 94% of people are still there and they're still growing. So this is not an ad for any of these big tech companies. None of them are perfect. There's lots of benefits of working at managed, well-regarded tech or just well-established companies in whatever field it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this will be the last question then before I wrap it up. Big reason that you trusted working with me early in Kadima's career was because we demonstrated the data. So I don't know if you've ever thought about what sort of ROI you received with your investment in your career with Kadima. I don't know if you've ever thought about that or how you would think about that.
The ROI was tremendous, to be sure. As I mentioned, you changed my life, Alon. ROI, it was expensive. It was the most that I'd ever spent on a career coach, and it was also the highest ROI that I've ever received from a career coach, probably by an order of magnitude. The ROI that I'm thinking of is not just financial, although certainly financially there was a very large impact. My compensation increased by a multiple. It was not by a percentage, it was by a multiple. And that changed. It opened a bunch of doors for me. It allowed me to do things that I would not otherwise have been able to do. It gave me entree into jobs that I couldn't have had. And like I mentioned, it changed the way I think about myself. It changed my expectations. It changed the way I think about the job market. That is all part of ROI. Is maybe difficult to measure with dollars, but is very real. Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah. And you mentioned that it was expensive because we had a very different pricing model then, and we were not scaled like we are. So I'm curious if you recall how much you invested, because
I think that it was, so I remember it was something like $2,000 a month plus 25% of the increase in compensation. And I ended up paying a lot more from that bonus 25% than the $2 a month.
Yeah, I remember that was one of the reasons we changed the process, because we worked very quickly with you. I think like in 2 to 3 months you got that money, and I almost felt guilty charging you so much because it worked so quickly and so well, and you got a nice uptick. And fortunately, what I've been doing here, and because of the benefit of working for Google and American Express and Facebook, I got Facebook swag on here today actually.
Nice.
But working at those companies, I've always learned about how to build for scale. So we've built this for scale where now we can offer the same sort of experience that you had for $10,000 to $15,000, and we offer much more affordable options in the thousands of dollars, even hundreds of dollars a month. So that's been our mission all along, to accelerate 1 million careers. And I know you and I are talking about how to use AI to help scale that, and we'll have continued conversations on that as well. But thank you not only for trusting in Kadima early on, but also just for your support and friendship, and it's been great getting to know you, and your wife helped contribute to my kid getting into good college. It's been great getting to meet you. Any last words of wisdom for people that are on the fence about working for Kadima now that we have more? What advice do you have, like, for people that come to you for advice, or like what words of wisdom for folks that are thinking about working with Kadima?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Alan. For the people that are on the fence, I was a bit on the fence because of the price. The price was just way more than I was used to paying, and I've worked with a couple of other coaches and a couple of other. Sometimes you get what you pay for. But the advice that I would have is, especially since the prices are lower now, just think about it in terms of what you have to lose. I'm here to tell you that it changed my life and that this thing works. If I'm wrong, then you will have spent some time with Alan and his team, and you will have lost whatever, $1,000, $10,000, $10,000. Just think about your lifespan. Think about the total amount of money that you're going to make in your 30 or 40 year career, and think about $10,000, if that's what it is. Think about that as a fraction of so that is your downside. It's not even 1%. It's like a tiny fraction of the amount of money that you're going to make. That's if I'm wrong. If I'm right, then the total amount of money that you're going to make is going to be a multiple of the road not taken. So just think about those, and then think about the probabilities of those, right? So if it's 50-50, then it's a no-brainer, right? Because you have a 50% chance of, let's say, doubling or tripling your compensation over your lifetime, and maybe you have a 50% chance of losing $10,000. That is such an easy bet to make. You cannot get anywhere close to that bet in Las Vegas. That's basically, I think, focus on the numbers, and this thing works.
Plus, unlike Vegas, we have a 14-day money-back guarantee. Awesome, Alan. It's great catching up with you. I'm looking forward to our dinner later this week. Last two questions I have for you. What is one last piece of some sick career advice you'd like to leave our audience with?
Grow your network. Talk to more people. No conversation is wasted.
Great. And how can people find you, reach out to you, help you?
People can find me on LinkedIn. That's really the best place, and the place I check the most frequently. It's at Alon Bochman, ALON BOCHMAN on LinkedIn, and I respond to almost every message I get on LinkedIn. Yeah,
and you've really increased your followership and presence on LinkedIn since we've known each other, and I follow you, and I've rung your bell, so I always check out your posts, so they're always thought-provoking. Anyway, thanks a lot, Alan. I appreciate you, and last three words I'll leave everybody with: own your career.
Nice.